Juniper's big push into security, a big endpoint player goes IPO, an existing firewall company enters a new market in the antivirus game. The topic for this week is dark web monitoring. Is it really worth it? And how can it help your enterprise? Find out on this edition of Enterprise Security Weekly. This is a Security Weekly production. Brought to you by IT Pro TV. With IT Pro TV, you gain access to the most important tools needed to prepare for your IT certification. IT Pro TV has thousands of hours of up-to-date, high-quality video content. Course topics include CCNP, CompTIA Advanced Security Practitioner, Ethical Hacking, Virtualization, Cryptography, SSH, Microsoft Server 2016, and more. You can stream their courses live and on demand to your Chromecast, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, PC, or mobile device. They have one low monthly subscription price and you can cancel at any time. Corporate pricing is available and clients include Harvard, MIT, UCSD, Stanford, and more. Visit itpro.tv/enterprise security to upgrade your brand with the most popular IT certifications. Use the code ES30 for a free 7-day trial and save 30% off for life. Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly, where we always whip before we nay-nay. I'm broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island. I'm, of course, your host, Paul Asadorian. I am actually the founder and CEO of Security Weekly and CEO of Offensive Countermeasures. On the lines via Google Hangouts, because of the wonders of technology, is John Strand, the owner and security analyst for Black Hills Information Security and CTO at Offensive Countermeasures. John, welcome to the show.
Let's get this train wreck of a webcast going.
Good Lord.
Our third attempt trying to get this stuff fired off today. So it's going to be an awesome podcast today.
It is. Quick announcement. IT Pro has updated their courseware in the areas of CCNA Security, CEH version 9, Metasploit, and Red Hat Linux. Make sure you check that out, itpro.tv. And we're going to talk about enterprise security news. It looks like Juniper has upgraded their security services. Some say to compete with Cisco, but they've got a virtual hodgepodge of advanced threat prevention and virtual SRX, virtual firewalls, and SRX series gateways, and the SRX 4000 series firewall. Now with cyber intelligence for all your APTs, John.
It's awesome. I absolutely love what they're doing with this direction. It looks like they're finally catching up with Forescout.
Yeah.
So good job to Juniper, finally being able to keep up with Forescout and what they've been doing for the past 6 years.
It's interesting how the larger companies like Juniper have a tough time keeping up with the new technologies. We talk about that's like a continuing theme in several different industries, including firewalls. Everyone wants to say, well, you don't get fired if you buy IBM. And, well, if you run Juniper, you're in good shape with all your network and firewalls. But some of the newer, not even small companies, right? Other companies that provide these services doing a fantastic job. They are making a big push into their endpoint. I know their endpoint, what is it called? Traps, also got an update as well. So,
yeah. And I got it. This kind of goes back into a kind of a reoccurring question that we've had on the show is it better for a company like Juniper, and Cisco's already in that space and so is IBM. Is it better for smaller companies to actually get to the point where they're embedded all the way down to the switch and they have firewalls and they do absolutely everything? Or is it better for a company to actually focus on their specific product line?
Right.
And this looks like it's another one of the companies that's actually driving to become all points of security. And, they keep on bantering about, well, if you buy our products, it's a unified point of management for all your security.
It's a unified security solution.
Which level? It is a unified security solution.
It's
Does
very
it actually
similar.
Work that way?
Yeah.
Most organizations that I see, they don't.
Back down here on planet Earth, it doesn't work that way. In other very similar news, Palo Alto Network steps up its endpoint security game. They're actually now a certified antivirus vendor. I don't know what that means, John, but I'm told that they're now certified for antivirus.
So this is, whenever I first read this, Paul, I originally thought this is absolute complete marketing mumbo jumbo. And then I read it again and I was like, yep, it's pretty much marketing mumbo jumbo. And then I read it a third time and I kind of get what they're talking about. So in the industry right now, you have antivirus, and traditionally that is blacklisting products. That would be your traditional AV, your McAfee, and your Symantec, right? When you start looking at traps, when you start looking at, let's say, Cylance, when you start looking at Bit9, it's anti-malware, but it's not necessarily antivirus per se. So if you're trying to adhere to the compliance requirements for HIPAA and for PCI, a lot of auditors will basically say you can't use those products to meet that requirement because it's technically not an antivirus product. But now that they're actually certified under HIPAA and PCI, now your compliance officer can say, okay, that's good. We'll allow it as an AV product, even though it's light years better than any malware or anti-malware, antivirus product that's out there. But whenever you start moving to whitelisting and more heuristics and behavioral analysis, now the compliance auditors can be happy.
I'm sorry. Traps is Palo Alto's or Traps is Juniper's?
No, Traps is Palo Alto's.
Okay.
Then you also have Cylance. Then you have Bit9. You
So
have all these
I misspoke before. Is Juniper entering the endpoint market? I don't know. They announced a whole bunch of stuff at NX Twerk.
Well, they said they could go all the way down to the switch level for isolation of nodes, and I think that's a reoccurring theme on this show.
Yes.
So I think it's definitely different. We're talking about Palo Alto Traps for certification.
Sorry, I misspoke before.
Yeah, it's very different than the Juniper stuff we were just talking about.
Yes. So it's kind of interesting, and again, a lot of these larger companies want to be one-stop shopping. And this is certainly, well, and I mean, Palo Alto's always kind of crossed that line, right? I mean, they were one of the first like intelligent layer 7 kind of firewall companies to really emerge on the market. So the Juniper one, I hope they stick to the networking end of it because that's what they've always been good at. With Palo Alto, they've always had like the research teams and the signatures to be able to go down to the endpoint and do some of that same stuff. So I feel pretty confident there as well. And both Juniper and Palo Alto make great products, don't get me wrong. I was a big fan of the NetScreen firewalls. That's right, NetScreen. For those of you that remember NetScreen. But with Juniper, it's kind of interesting. If you can go down to the switch port level, the integration possibilities there are pretty awesome. So you can turn people's ports. Turning people's ports off is pretty effective, except when they unplug from one port and then just plug into another port, and then you're just playing like the whack-a-mole game until they've disabled all the. Well, I don't know how smart the turning off the port is. Does it go by your MAC address? Like, can they say this MAC address can't communicate on this switch port? That would be pretty cool.
So I haven't touched the Juniper product, but I do know, like I said, this reads a lot like what Forescout has been doing for a long, long time, where they integrate all the way down to the switch level. And I know we'll have someone from Juniper call up and yell at us and say, we're fundamentally different because we're next-gen heuristic behavioral learning, machine analytics, AI crap, whatever. But the point is, like a lot of these products, whenever they integrate down to the switch, they can actually see that device plug in. And then if you unplug it and plug it into another port, it'll recognize its MAC address and it'll block it there. It's automatically doing whack-a-mole. But some of them even go a bit further. They'll look at the MAC address, but then they'll also look at like user agent string to try to identify that system. So if somebody's trying to change their MAC address or clone a MAC address, but it doesn't actually fit the profile, it'll actually still shut it down. So there's some really cool intelligence in these product spaces. So if you're looking at the Juniper product and you've actually ran it, please let us know. We'd like to know how it went in your environment. But I do know in our penetration tests, we have seen Forescout seeing what they're doing. And whenever it's implemented properly, it is really cool because it does automate the detection and shutting down of layer 2 attacks. And whenever you have systems jumping around the inside of the network, far beyond just seeing media access control addresses on devices pop up in different locations. So it's some cool technologies, but you got to be pretty advanced to actually implement something that goes all the way down to that endpoint.
In other news, cybersecurity unicorn Tanium prepares for IPO. I know you're familiar with Tanium, John, a little bit.
And I think we
I am as well.
we have anything bad that I think we've ever said about this product on the show? I don't think so. But one of the things that is interesting is this product's approach is being able to query endpoints across the entire enterprise at ridiculously fast speeds. And anytime you have a product in security that's increasing awareness and makes it easier for you to ask questions and get answers back from your network is an awesome product in my book. So I wish them Godspeed and good luck. Hopefully it doesn't destroy their capability to be agile. I think it was their CIO or CEO said, yeah, there's some concerns that once you move IPO, it reduces your ability to be effective in moving in the marketplace quickly. And he says he doesn't think that that's going to be a problem. I don't know if that's going to be the case. Hopefully it's not, but we hope that the product continues kicking ass and doing really well in what it does.
Their founders came from Big Fix. I think it's Big Fix, right? I don't know if Big Fix was IPO. It'd be interesting to see if on their board they have people who have taken companies public and still maintained their position and innovation spirit in the marketplace. And I agree with your sentiments on Tanium. I think Tanium is a great product as well. I think its ability to query end systems and some of the integrations are certainly very interesting for Tanium. And they're a big integration style company. In other words, they provide the access to the information on the endpoints, and then their goal, at least when I talked to them a year ago, their goal was to partner with people and do integration. So they integrate with vulnerability management systems. They integrate with threat intelligence systems so that you can go find that stuff like instantly on your network. And their technology, I mean, they basically create a pseudo peer-to-peer mesh network to get all that information from the endpoints back. And I think that's really innovative, and it'd be interesting to see what happens once they IPO.
So I got a question for you, Paul. This is something ever since you sent out the show notes for today that I've been thinking about. Whenever you have Tanium, you also have Carbon Black, which does something very, very similar. But the way Carbon Black is trying to sell themselves is like it's endpoint protection. Now, I know that they partnered and they basically merged with Bit9, but really Carbon Black does that type of analysis, kind of the process flight recording, querying the entire environment, what's going on. But it seems like their focus is kind of spread a little bit, and they're not as focused as they once were. And it looks like Tanium is basically focusing on what Carbon Black originally was, being a flight recorder, getting you analytics from all your endpoints, being able to ask questions across the enterprise. Do you think it's better to go the Tanium route, where you focus on basically inventory and querying, being able to ask questions? Or is it better to kind of go the Carbon Black route, where you're trying to diversify, or at least say you're diversifying what your product actually does?
I do think you need some type of protection product on your endpoints. However, if I had to pick, I'd go for good administration. And I'm a little more familiar with Tanium than Carbon Black. And the thing that gets me about Tanium is they target not just security people. In fact, they're primarily targeting with their product operational security people, operations people, even outside of security. And I think that's why they were so heavily funded in the beginning, grew so fast, and are now on IPO. Like their trajectory and their growth rate, if you look at it from a business and market perspective, is just amazing. They're like the most highly funded security startup in maybe in history. And I think the reason for that is they're not just targeting the security industry. They're targeting anyone who administers systems in an enterprise, and that's every single enterprise. And they're giving them the ability to ask questions. And it's very open-ended. And I think that's really, so not only can the security team ask security questions, administrators can ask administrative questions or even security. How many systems are missing this patch? And get an answer back really, really fast. And so they position themselves as kind of finding the gaps and being able to tell you exactly what's missing without having to do any kind of scanning or implement all this sort of thing. You just put their agent on, and the way it communicates back can query your entire organization very, very fast. And I think that's why I would choose Tanium, certainly, because it now that kind of extends into me working with the operations team, which I think is extremely important. So I can buy a tool for security, and oh, by the way, my administrators and operations groups can take advantage of it as well.
Very cool. And I think that the integrations and partnerships make a big boost for that company as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Sorry. Light Cyber introduces a purple team assessment. What is this purple team thing? It's being used in some marketing now. I mean, I understand what a purple team thing is, but like, why should you use it?
Well, I think the first instance I ever heard of the phrase purple team was a presentation by Dave Kennedy and Mick Douglas years ago. And it basically involves doing a red team and seeing how your defenses and your capabilities to identify those red team tactics work. So with this, looking at their press release, they're basically offering kind of an internal pivot data exfiltration test, and they're doing it specifically to sell their products. Now, this is a gutsy move. It's really, really cool marketing. And if you're a pen testing firm, this is something you need to stand up and you need to pay very close attention to. If you look at what they're doing, they're selling their product by offering a service that everyone needs for free. And what you're going to start seeing in the industry is you're going to see the big players like your SecureWorks or Dell SecureWorks or wherever they're at in that transition, who sell security products and services, kind of managed security services, offering these red teams, these pen tests, these pivot assessments at little to no cost, basically as a loss leader, so they can get their foot in the door and sell their products. This is good and this is interesting, and it's also very dangerous at the same time. It's good because it's going to force firms that do pen testing to get better at what they do, to be able to differentiate. It's bad because if you are having an assessment done by a partner of this company,
that's my concern.
I can almost guarantee you that it's going to be done in such a way that it's going to highlight the capabilities of LightCyber's product. It's not going to be a true assessment of what that product does, but it's basically going to be a glorified dog and pony show, showing you exactly how awesome the LightCyber product is. That's why you really need to have that separation between audit and assessment and implementation as clear as possible. But it's a great marketing tactic.
Yeah, I mean, I would tell LightCyber, I'm going to bring my own red team, and then we'll see how you fare. And who knows? They may fare well, John. I don't know.
They may. I think that's an absolute possibility. But I do agree with you. Bring in an outside firm that's not completely biased. It's kind of like presidential candidates. They always talk about their doctors and they release their health records. What is the health of Donald Trump? What is the health of Hillary Clinton? They should release the records. Well, can you release a damn thing from the doctor or can you believe anything that comes from a doctor that was hired by one of the candidates? You absolutely can't. So this becomes problematic, but I still think it's a beautiful marketing sales tactic.
Absolutely. Symantec selects VMware AirWatch to build enhanced endpoint security integrations. And I was kind of confused as to what is VMware AirWatch and what does VMware's play into the endpoint? I couldn't really get that from this article.
I think we're still seeing this. This has been a trend, and it's been interesting since we've started this particular podcast. How many trends we start to see, like the user behavioral analytics trends, and like the trend of trying to get down to the desktop. I think what you're seeing with this is you're seeing companies like Palo Alto, you're seeing companies like Juniper, you're seeing companies like Symantec scrambling to get that desktop visibility that you can get from Tanium, that you can get from Carbon Black, and trying to get even closer down to the endpoints for security management. So this just looks like it's another play to catch up with what a lot of the startup, smaller companies have already been doing.
Interesting. IBM and Carbon Black deepen ties. And I think, again, here is IBM's play to try and get into the ever-growing endpoint security market.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. Carbon Black for initial analysis and flight recording as far as what's happening, and then using IBM to actually handle the mitigation, the segmentation, and the isolation. This is an interesting play by both of them. It sounds like it could be really, really cool. Once again, talking about what Forescout has been doing for a long, long, long time. But these two players actually have the funding. They have the backing. If they wanted to make it something awesome, they very well could. So I haven't seen it yet at all, but this one is one that I would actually watch fairly closely, and it would be awesome to get a demo to see how well it's actually implemented.
So it's interesting. Carbon Black has reportedly filed for an IPO as well. And it says, as it jostles with other up-and-coming firms in the security space, including Tanium and Cylance, and incumbents like Symantec.
Yeah, which coincidentally happens to be a number of the firms that we've already talked about today. So once again, there is a theme. And I got a question, Paul, whenever you pick these out, are you picking these out based on a theme, or are these just basically the news stories that start percolating? Because if these are the ones that are popping to the top of your queue, I would say it's extremely ironic, even frightening, that we have 3-4 stories of companies trying to do the exact same thing in the exact same space at the exact same time.
So I choose the stories based on companies' product specific or solution specific news. So there's a lot of news about quarterly results. There's a lot of news about changes in the personnel at higher levels at all the companies. There are a ton of announcements of companies that have won awards or gone to a conference or had their own conference. I basically ignore all of that stuff, and what is left is basically the companies posting about technology-based things like, top 5 things to improve your incident response program. Weed all that stuff out. And then what's left is the actual product news. And those are the stories that I'm selecting. There's no rhyme or reason other than that. There's no theme that I chose to go with. It's just the company's news that speaks to what are they doing in the enterprise security market. That's pretty tricky to find, actually. I've got a lot of methods of being able to find those articles, some of which I will likely release. There's a lot of different sources. Of course, we've talked about Owler as being one of those primary sources. So that's how I follow it, and that's how I come up with all kinds of fun stuff for us to talk about.
It almost does seem like these guys are basically responding to each other. Basically, one company says that they're getting deeper into the endpoint, another company retaliates and says that they're getting deeper into the endpoint. Basically, just trying to keep market share and mind share for these specific topics as much as they can.
It's interesting. The other article that I found was it's called "The 10 Coolest Network Security Products of 2016," and this was actually published back in July. And this talks about Fireglass Threat Isolation Platform, which I hadn't heard of, but there's a lot of some I recognized and some I did not. And usually articles like this are completely crappy, but this one actually seemed pretty good, and it mentioned some products that I hadn't checked out. FireEye Power, I don't know if you've heard of that one.
Mm-hmm. They also had FireEye Essentials, which I thought was really interesting for small to medium-sized businesses.
And Symantec Advanced Threat Protection, which we've talked about on the show, basically stating if you already have it, you should use it and expand upon it. SonicWall from Dell. ProtectWise Cloud is in there, which is interesting. We could talk more about ProtectWise.
And I think that you and I both love ProtectWise. I mean, we're kind of in the same space, but not really. It's just been kind of difficult the past couple of weeks. I think we've had a number of people, especially with their cloud product, they've been running into problems of actually being able to handle the data bandwidth that a lot of organizations implement. So hopefully ProtectWise gets that worked out sometime soon.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some of these are smaller businesses, and some of these are more enterprise solutions. But I thought it was an interesting list to come up with some stuff that I hadn't heard of before. And it's interesting. I think ProtectWise is interesting. It lets you play back network traffic.
Yeah.
And having been a network analyst, security analyst for some time, I can see where that maybe I struggled to find like a really practical usage for that. I'm sure they have use cases that are totally practical that I haven't thought of, but I've throughout my career, John, I don't know how often you sat there and gone, well, I really wish I could play back that traffic and just see what it was doing. I mean, I want to play it back to see if I detect it, but I don't know.
I don't know. I think it might be one of those things where it may be cool in the respect that we may not have used it, but we didn't know we needed it until we actually see it happen.
Yeah. I totally agree. That's a tough product to sell, too. A lot of times
you can play things back by going through packet filters and kind of seeing what happened. But yeah, it gets into that question of trying to do full data analytics and capture and replay and putting that in the cloud and dealing with sharding issues at like something like AWS. That's a tough gig. And I hope they get it worked out. I really do, because I think it's a cool concept of being able to replay those. And let's be honest, their dashboard is like candy. You just want to lick it.
Yes, absolutely. I can see when a lot of the attacks we were looking at were attacks on the IP protocol itself. Those were interesting to play back because you had to analyze and see what was going on and really dig into the packets. I mean, I don't really see most of the attacks that we deal with today are really malware specifically, and web-based attacks. And I mean, that just different. I don't know. Maybe there is a use case.
Judy Novak is still trucking. I remember at Cyber Defense Initiative last December, Judy Novak released like 2 0 days for bypassing firewalls, IDS, and IPS systems that were based on the Linux kernel. and she's frighteningly good at what she does. But no, I don't see a lot of those attacks in incident response or talking to our customers on a regular basis. But come on, for packet heads like you and me, that's the stuff, right? We could sit and talk about that crap for hours.
And the Linux kernel is a train wreck when it comes to security like that. So that doesn't surprise me.
Well, remember, a lot of the TCP IP stack was from BSD. So who do you blame for that?
I don't know. I still blame Linus, but that's just me. Maybe that actually it's not just me. Alrighty. Well, that wraps up the enterprise security news for this week. We're going to take a short break, come back and talk about dark web monitoring. So stay tuned.